All right, my name is Taylor, and I am the marketing strategist at Gravidia. And this is our podcast, Leadership Line of Sight, where we are trying to find people that you can identify with, the people that I know kind of bring out the inside leader in me. Because really, when I think about today's guest, because we're having Hannah Fink on, and she is the founder of Sumato. And really, when we talk about this company, we're talking about a company that's going to make Pilates like Peloton and more. And I'm really excited to chat with you, Hannah. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Taylor.
Now, did I say that right?
Yeah, you did. Dead on.
Oh, that's awesome. And really, I find it so interesting to talk to you as an inventor, because I've got a daughter that's really what she wants to be. She's 7.
That's awesome.
And she talks about making new things all the time. How old were you?
So cool. When this all started?
No, how old were you when you I guess when you knew that there was this glow, right? Because that's what I sense about you. Am I wrong? Is that this is this thing inside that's speaking outside?
That's a good question. I think when I felt the itch to make things, I think that started probably when I was in middle school age. I desperately wanted I really wanted a tree house, but I was settling for a fort. And actually, no, it started way earlier, because I remember building forts with my cousins at my aunt's house once. And I think that really started a fire. And it went from building forts as a kid to building a hammock stand, and then, taking things apart and building things like ladders to get out of second-story windows so I could sneak out. And that one didn't work so well, actually. That was a iteration lesson.
So that's
test before you try.
Well, when they say that necessity is the mother of invention, I find that a lot of the time people that eventually show an incredible prowess start with mischief.
Yeah, it's funny because the mischief, I think, was really what set things off, because that started in high school. I wanted to do things I obviously wasn't allowed to do, and had to figure out how to do them without anyone finding out. So, sneaking out was the main thing, where that was the first time that I really experienced real product design iteration. First attempt failed miserably, and we go from there. And what are we going to do now? How do we improve it? How do we make sure we stay safe? And then also this is going to say a lot, but when I would have friends over, the things that I could do, they might not be able to do to sneak out of the house. We would go out through the basement window, but there were grates above them, so I would have to lift the grate. And so I had to I would be able to pull myself out of this 4-foot what is a wind? It's a window well.
Yeah, the window well on the outside. Yeah, and so this was deep into the ground.
Deep in the ground, covered in ivy. And I could lift myself out, but my friends couldn't. So I had to build them structures so that they could climb out of the window wells.
So at that point, you probably had a couple of things that occurred to you. Is one, that you have some good physical ability, but not everybody has that as an ability.
Yeah, I think that was the first time where it really became apparent, if you're trying to make a product for a bunch of people, you cannot be the only one testing it, because everyone's different, and you have to see how other people interact with what you're making, because there's things that other people see that are obvious that aren't obvious to you, and it's a team sport.
Okay, I find that I more often experience that the other way around, where I think something is super obvious.
Yeah.
And people are yeah, we don't get it.
Yeah, well, that happens too, and that, that's an important thing you need to know about your product when you're making something that, like, you know, a lot of times when you're the one making it, you're seeing all of these intricacies, especially, like, when it comes to user experience design, UX. Like, you think that, like, your brain map makes perfect sense, and then someone else sees it and, like, one button leading to some other page just has no logic to someone else.
Man, that's like the story of my life. I happen to like mentally approach things like possibly upside down and backwards. And because of that, I find a lot of things that I can't remember who said it, but you can't normally actually see process happen in the order it happens. If you're decoding it, you like have to go backwards in order to see how it functions. And I like live at that other end. Like even how I set goals as an entrepreneur, I go to where the success is in my mind and say, okay, what was the essence of this? How did we get here? And how can I follow this path backwards as opposed to where everyone else seems to be focused on how they get started?
I feel like maybe what you're experiencing is a very, like, engineering forward way of thinking, and then, like, starting with the user, like, you know, what is their journey gonna look like? That's sort of like an industrial design or like a UX way of thinking, like starting with the initial approach of a product, like you see it, what's your first impulse going to be? Where are you going to grab on this thing? Like, how are you going to pick it up? What button are you going to want to push? And then, like, that leads to, like, okay, so if that's your first impulse, like, how do we get them to this other endpoint to use the product properly? And I feel like there's those two ways of thinking, and then, like, being able to combine them, then you have, like, magic, right? Because then you have something that works and something that people know how to work intuitively.
Okay, so there's some things that are like really magic. Like they like are you with me when Einstein's definition of perfect, everything you need and nothing more,
Okay.
right? Like what do you see as an industrial designer that you're like they hit it?
Oh, like the perfect product?
Like do you have any products that you're just like like I can list the reasons that I love this because it's so for me as someone who writes a lot of copy and talks a lot about the way we talk, I find that I see that now and again where I'm like, "Oh my goodness, that's the perfect amount of being direct but being creative." Right?
Yeah.
Or when I look at the economy of words, man, did that person said that so efficiently.
It's funny. There have definitely been times when I'm using a product and I'm thinking to myself, like, they really knocked it out of the park. Like, this is a beautiful design. Like, I know exactly how to use it without even reading instructions. Like, I can set it up, whatever. But those moments I feel like are so fleeting because, like, it doesn't stick in your head unless you, like, experience frustrations. Like, I remember products that I think are horrible, but the products that are so good, like, you can't remember, but that's a good thing. Like, you shouldn't be remembering, like, all these things that really are just supposed to, like, you know, be these, like, passive objects in your everyday life. You use it and then you don't even think about it. But if something comes to mind, I will say, like, I'll interrupt and I'll tell you what it is if I think of something. But
Oh, that's
yeah,
totally
I
fine
really
because
I
I
remember the
actually
things that don't work.
no, but you touched on something that's really powerful. As an industrial designer, if you are able to really feel the customer and their experience, normally one of the greatest rewards you'll get is like silence,
Yeah.
right? Is that it
Yeah,
fits so well, there's no comment.
right. Exactly. Like, that people don't, they're I feel like people sort of function with a baseline level of expectation that things will work. And so when things work, they aren't thinking like that something really went above and beyond for them. They're thinking like, great, like this is what was supposed to happen. And they're not like thinking about the praise or like that something was, gave them more than they expected. So yeah, but I will also say, like, there's all these design awards, like the Red Dot Award and like all these expensive design awards that like design forward corporations will enroll in so that their products can have that like badge of honor. But the thing, and this is like a friend of mine who has a podcast mentioned this on his podcast, but it really resonated with me that like the real design awards are Amazon reviews. Like if you're getting really positive Amazon reviews, like because those are the people are able to just tell you exactly what they think of your design, exactly what they think of your product, no filter. It's not like a bunch of talking heads, design experts. It's like the people who are actually interacting with the product every day. And so like if you've got 5 stars on Amazon, that's like better than a Red Dot Award.
Oh yeah. And like that's the thing where like, we don't play for matchsticks, right? The reason that a lot of people are inspired to do things like this is because the money is the way that we keep score on being able to create value for others. And I think that value is still a separation. So in my mind, the value is the difference between what you charge and what they get. If you are not creating more value than what you charge, then you're not like that's the review along with the order. That's the measurement of it.
Yeah, so that's interesting because pricing can sometimes increase the value of your product. Like if you calculate like how much it costs to manufacture and all this stuff, you do all the math and you can sell the product for, like a nickel a piece, people won't value the product as much as like a $10 version of it. They're going to assume that the $10 version of it is more sophisticated than the 5-cent version. So like there's definitely, I agree with what you're saying, but there's also like a level of like play that you have there with like perception and value.
You are
too.
touching on something that I find very interesting. So there was a book called I believe it's called the Tales of the Pricing Man, or the Story of the Pricing Man. It's by Simon of Simon and Schuster. And what he's talking about is the whole theory behind price. And imagine that you look at price as though it's a filter. So you can say that if I price it here, these are the people I'm going to talk to. If I price it here, these are the people that I'm going to talk to, and so on. So instead, what he was looking at is, are you creating a product that will actually fit the market that you're trying to approach? And that's where this pricing can really sway. And then the other thing that I find interesting when it comes to establishing price is also the quality of the deliverable. Like you can do it for this price, but when you take a look at your specific task as an industrial designer, when you're choosing a price and it's associated with different people and you're making something that goes into their home, now you have to make a design that's going to fit that group.
Right, exactly. And it's also like, there's a lot of decisions between, materials and processes to make certain parts and things. And, as if you're an industrial designer working for a corporation or something like that, they have price points they're trying to hit, and you have constraints, and you might not be able to, use a certain type of, I don't know, material or finish that you want to use that would drive up the price because they're trying to hit a certain price. But working for your own company, trying to produce a product that you have complete control over, like what I'm doing with Samato, those decisions are pretty major because, if somebody's going to have something of size in it in their home, it's going to take up visual space, and those finishes, those materials, the processes that you're using to build this, those affect how it looks and how it feels. And, you're playing this balancing game of like, how can I make this within a reasonable price range, but still be able to give people the product that they're going to want to have in their homes.
And that's something that I find like really interesting about what you see, because I was checking a few things out, and really I think that I want to show some things on the screen here, and I want you to talk a little bit about your project with Groove. Let's go back to before Samato.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So, because when you were talking about like pricing and where you're going to fit in, you also have to understand what other things are part of the environment you're going to. Like I used to work for Lexus cars.
Mhm.
And when you took a look at the quality of the material inside the car and how it functioned and how the sounds that the devices made or didn't make, like cars that even in the early 2000s had double paned glass. And if you're going to make something that fits into a house that drives a Lexus, then they're going to have expectations. Like if there's rollers on this product, how do those sound?
Right.
And how do those affect their floors? Because the flooring in the house is going to be different than perhaps in the general market. So I'm going to pull up the Groove here. But why don't you talk a little bit about this? Because this was a thesis project, right?
Yeah, this was a master's thesis. So the prototype that I'm assuming you're probably gonna pull up, that was, I think, maybe like the 7th prototype I did for that project. It was very much a prototype and not like a final visual product that I would expect people to have in their homes. Um, but actually, I finished that prototype in my apartment because COVID hit and our entire campus shut down. So I had to like shape that foam with like a cheese grater. Um, and
What?
yeah, so all of that was built in it, most of it. I think I was able to squeeze in the last time slot on the CNC machine to mill the parts out, and then the rest I had to do in my apartment.
Okay,
And
this
I
is brilliant.
yeah, I
Because
3D printed
watching
like
this and like
everything.
watching the so let me see if I can bridge here. But to describe
Yeah.
what
Mhm.
I saw was something that could exist in your home and operate like an ottoman, right?
Yeah, it
And
was
what
like
I
a
want somebody to
bench.
picture that's like listening to this is think about 3 footstools that have come together to make an ottoman. Am I on the wrong track?
No, so I would call it maybe a bench. Like, the
Mhm.
idea is like maybe it would sit in like, under a set of windows, in your living room or something like that, like, but anyway, so like a bench, and yeah, you're like 3 footstools connected by bungee cords that can be interchanged and attached and detached to change the amount of resistance. So it was essentially just this like resistance machine, this flat resistance machine made out of 3 units. So you can push and pull them, and then do tons of different exercises like a leg press or like a sliding plank or toe raises, heel raises.
I like the way that you were kind of describing that. So what we're talking about something is like when it's in stealth mode, when you're not actively using it, this would be a bench under a set of windows. This could be something that you put your feet up on in front of a couch. Like it does fit a few different ways in a house. And
Yeah.
I could just imagine that like what they do at a company like Lazy Boy, if you could upholster this in different ways and make this that like hidden feature in a house, right?
Yeah, totally.
And then you were talking about the active part of working with it. So when you're ready to work with it, you wouldn't really have to do much except you'd have to clear probably about 3 feet on either end of this.
Yeah, maybe like three, depending on how tall you are. Yeah.
Yeah. So imagine that you had these kind of segmented bench, and when you extended your body, the parts would come apart.
Well, let me start a little bit further back because just to make it all sort of make sense, I grew up doing competitive gymnastics. And um, if any of you people listening have ever known a kid who is like really into gymnastics or did gymnastics yourself, you'll probably have like seen them use the entire world as their gym. So like they go home and they start like doing handstands on the side of the couch, or like they're like vaulting over the living room ottoman or whatever. Doing like splits as you watch TV, just like sort of almost doing it like mindlessly and like joyfully, right? And so like to me growing up, you know, movement and working out, I always, you know, found it to be like a treat, right? But exercise for most adults is like almost like this form of punishment. And people work out almost to sort of like repent for the sin of just enjoying food and life. And I mean, you know, how sad, like what an awful way to move through life where you're just enjoying yourself, you're eating good food, and then you feel guilty about it constantly, and then you punish yourself. You're like doing self-flagellation on the treadmill, you know, beating yourself up for eating a cookie. And so I, you know, like I feel like it was almost like my life's mission to turn that mentality around and try to invent things that made moving more fun. So I started this thesis researching play and trying to really understand like what makes people play, what is play, and is it possible to sort of induce that playfulness and that sense of play in adults to get them to sort of just mindlessly, you know, use a piece of fitness equipment and just sort of enjoy moving. So that's where the groove came from. I you know, came up with a few ideas. One was like a bookshelf that you could climb up. One was like a rocking chair that had like this totally, it was almost like a sphere on the bottom of it, so you would have to like balance on it. What else? I can't even remember some of the others, but the one that seemed most successful was the expanding bench that I eventually called the Groove. And it kind of it evolved in something a little bit more than one of those sort of mindless movement furniture pieces where like you would just mindlessly climb or swing or rock or jump, because this is something that you would probably actively get on and start doing specific exercises. It might not be super mindless, but that was like the origin story of it. That's how it came to be.
Wow. So I'm just imagining all the time that you spent thinking on things because of how many different options you had. Like this has to be something that is like operating all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm always kind of thinking about it because I'm always sort of using furniture and things in my life maybe as you should not be using it. Like I have this bed behind me, and this like footboard is really cool for doing like cartwheels and seeing if you can balance, and then you can wedge your feet on the ceiling and then like, you know, like almost like a tension rod with your body. And it's like things like that, you know, it's ridiculous. And I would never expect to build a product that would help people do that, because that's insane and probably a really stupid thing for anyone to be doing. But like, you know, if you're constantly just sort of like having fun with objects and using them in weird ways, you're also using that sort of like invention part of your brain too.
Wow. I was just thinking about like the, as you were talking about that is one, this is something I find fun because there's like, people are so interesting. And there's some things that we don't notice because of just like how we're built. So for example, I would be going shopping with my wife and we'd be walking through a furniture store and I would be like selling her the furniture. Like, what do you think about this coffee table? And she would be like, I don't know, it's all right. I was like, but did you see the hardware? And look, soft close, right? And then as soon as she like got on board, then I would be going the opposing direction because I wanted the resistance. And I'd be like, oh, but the legs, not so good legs, hey?
What a battle. She's constantly, you like get her in there and then you're like, you're switching on her.
Well, the thing, like a lot of people just like the engagement and they like the, like to kind of hear their opinions on a lot of things, especially as when you can take the big things small. But I think that that's the same thing as yourself, where, you know, some people might look at things and say, well, you know, why are there Or are there sock prints on the ceiling, or something to that? But on the other side is that that's like a big thing about how you experience the world.
Yeah.
So I remember, like, would you consider yourself a tactile prime? Like, is sense of touch your primary touch? Is it your primary sense?
That's a really interesting question. I've never been asked that. Um, well, what would make a sense primary?
Like, it would be like so imagine you're experiencing a new space, right? Like, when you move to your current house, uh, would you say that a lot of, like, some people might describe the aesthetic? For me, I'm an audio person, so like
Mm,
I noticed that I'm sensitive. Like, casinos have gotten better over time; they're not as loud as they were. But that type of stuff I find irritating. Just
interesting.
like maybe for you, it might be fabrics.
That's really interesting. Um, you know, I mean, touch has a lot to do with it. There's a pillow on my bed. It's like this fake shearling, and I will never get rid of this pillow. I love that texture so much. But I think it's visual. I think my primary sense is seeing.
Hmm.
Um, I was I don't know where this came from, but, my friends and I were talking about what we call our princess traits, which is
Okay.
like what what is the, what is, like, your non-negotiable as you move through life that would, like, it would ruin your day, it would ruin your vacation if you had to, like, deal with this. And this, I mean, take this with a grain of salt, but, like, I'd say my princess trait would be the, like, visual aesthetics of a place. Like,
Ah,
honestly, it's not gonna, like, I'm not gonna, let on to anyone that is actually, like, ruining my day, but I am noticing, I'm noticing everything if I walk into a house or something, or if I walk into an Airbnb and, like, I'm just not liking the way it looks. I'm not enjoying their decoration decisions, their, um, like linen choices or pattern choices for the couch, like I cannot stop my brain from just like reeling and like zeroing in on it. And so like I would call that my princess trait, the aesthetics of a place.
huh. Well, maybe you are a visual prime, but it could be that tactile is like also something that you would consider a strength. Uh,
Yeah.
the reason that this kind of comes on my radar is because I can normally pick it up with people when I've talked to them long enough. Like, the most common would probably be a visual prime. And in that case, they might say things like looks like instead of sounds like, or
Mm,
feels good.
interesting.
And those are the things that will kind of lead somebody in. But it does take some time to pick up on those. And I think the only reason I pick up on them is because I'm an audio prime.
Okay. That's
Yeah,
interesting.
I also learn really well with audio, and I like to know that that's a strength, so then I can kind of lean into it a little bit more. Because other people would tell me, they're like, "Well, I got to read the book and write it down," and I'm like, "Man, I want to put it on my speakers and turn it to 2 times speed." Like, it's I just get good flow from there.
Okay, cool.
So we were talking about like you kind of moving through these phases and then deciding that the groove was going to be something that you kind of experimented with. And this was something that you did as a master's thesis, but now you're doing, I guess, a real world thesis.
Yeah.
The first
Well,
vision that we brought up,
starting a company, but yeah.
yes, right? Now, I'm, I think that when I describe a company, I describe teams of humans and computers trying to achieve goals together.
Yeah.
Right, and everybody's got to see something different, but I also think as entrepreneurship is an expression, and this is an obviously an expression to you.
Yeah. Yeah,
The
it's
idea
interesting.
is, how did you get here?
Um, that's a really good question. So I finished my master's thesis and I was a little bit, burnt out after all of that and finishing everything during a pandemic was a lot. So I took some time. I sort of joined the regular in industrial design workforce and worked at a small design studio and put things sort of on the back burner for a little while. But all of my mentors were telling me, like, you've got to try to patent some of these ideas. Like, you've got to like take this somewhere. And the more I thought about like, how am I going to take this thing to the next level, the more I thought like the best in all the research that I did on fitness equipment that's currently available to people, fitness equipment that's on the market today. It was super obvious that Pilates was the most dynamic modality of fitness that exists today, and that the Pilates reformer allows for so much different kind of body movements. It's really the ideal full body workout. You can hit the 4 pillars of exercise: strength training, cardio, mobility, which is like flexibility, and balance training, all in the same workout, which a lot of fitness equipment for the home today is very cardio based. And if you want to, do some lifting for strength training, if you want to do stretching, if you want to do balance training, you have to find other time to do that. And I know like sometimes the Peloton classes, they have you like lifting a few weights while you're on this thing, but like it's not really gonna it's not gonna like do the strength training that you would want to hit if you're trying to really hit all 4 pillars of fitness with your daily workout. So, if you're going to invest $1,000 or $2,000 or maybe even $3,000 on a piece of home fitness equipment, the assumption is that this is the thing that you're going to be doing exclusively day in, day out. This is how you're going to be exercising, right? So if you're going to invest that much money, you should invest in something that's going to be able to do it all for you. So when I wanted to take the groove to the next level, I thought like Pilates, that's what I should really be focusing on. Like I could sort of dive back into this sort of new invention, this bench thing, but that would be like I would have to also invent a totally different form of, exercise, right? Like, create totally new movements and things like that are special for this thing. But there's already this growing community around Pilates. And then if you look at the Pilates reformer as it exists today, the thing is massive. It hasn't been redesigned in 100 years since it was first invented. And there's just a huge gap in the market. Like I think Pilates was the fastest growing like exercise according to Garmin in 2021. I'd have to double check on that, but I'm pretty sure that's true. Mm-hmm. You see like Kim Kardashian is all over it on Keeping Up with the Kardashians. It's becoming like more ingrained in our culture today. People like it. They want more of it. And it's expanding into new modalities. Like now we have Legree, which is sort of a faster pace. If you've ever done like solid core, SLT, or body rock, it's sort of like a younger, cooler version of Pilates. It's faster. It's, more of this like intense burn rather than the sort of mindful, slower burn of traditional Pilates. That's a little bit more like recovery and slow, mindful strength training based.
I'm aware of something like that in martial arts. So a lot of people are aware of Tai Chi, which is like the slow meditative version.
Yeah.
The faster combat version of that is called push hands. Mm-hmm. And there's some Josh Waitskin. He's like he's my dreamboat as far as somebody who is an incredible coach. He wrote a book called The Art of Learning. Okay. And he was that chess master that the book and movie Searching for Bobby Fischer was written after. Cool. And so he is just incredible at these things. But I think that that's what you're describing is essentially this is a more cardio-based version of Pilates, maybe?
Legree. Yeah, I would say, I'd say like your heart rate is up a little bit more with Legree than it would be with traditional Pilates. But anyway, like, so there's a world already out there, and there's a product in that world that desperately needs to be redesigned. And especially for the home, because these things are traditionally massive. They're very intimidating looking. They look like a torture device. I mean, there's straps and bits and bobbles all over the place. It's not totally clear what you're supposed to do with things if you're new to Pilates and you're just approaching this machine. So when I decided to finally, that I was like recovered from that burnout, ready to start this company, ready to take this thing, the Groove, to the next level, I decided to instead return to the Pilates reformer, redesign the Pilates reformer, add in this connected element so that there could be this AI coaching element that's taking you through classes. And that's like a whole other element of it that is interesting and is something that I'm very passionate about. Being able to create this algorithm that can build long-term fitness plans for people, so that you're not just, like, you get a piece of fitness equipment and sometimes they have, they might call it a long-term plan or something like similar, but it's like maybe like a 4-week long course, and it's like targeting a specific part of your body, or maybe like a fat burn course or something like that. And it takes you through this like 4-week course, and then there's like, it drops you off, and then you're like, okay, well, I guess I'll target a new part of my body now. But realistically, like, if you want to see especially specific changes in your body, it requires a long-term fitness plan that can carry you through these benchmarks and hitting goals slowly over time. And it's not a 4-week process. If you want to grow your biceps and triceps or whatever, if you do want to lose weight, or if you're trying to improve your cardiovascular health, like, that's like a long-term thing. That's not a 4-week course. And so the idea is that this algorithm would get to know you like a actual coach would, be able to track your progress. And these programs, I mean, they're really it's just math, right? Like, if you want to grow muscles, you do high resistance, low rep exercises. And if you want to tone your body down, you do low resistance, high rep exercises. So like taking those types of, I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the word, but taking those elements and turning it into an algorithm so that everybody can get this very personalized experience that's not going to sort of leave them dropped off after a few weeks to guess what they should do next. I mean, these things are, people get degrees in exercise science. It's not easy to be able to guide yourself through something like that.
But I grew up in the generation that had the ab roller, and they promised us abs in 6 or 7 minutes.
Yeah, right. Oh my God, I remember the ab roller infomercials.
Yeah,
Like,
talk about something that looks a little like a torture device, right?
Yeah.
Like, that looks how people feel about doing exercise.
Yeah. And it's like, there's also this element where a lot of these, a lot of fitness equipment isn't particularly engaging. Like, it's not that much fun to, I don't want to like hate on treadmills and spin bikes too much, but like, it's not that much fun to be doing the same repetitive movement every single time. And
You know where the
it's not
treadmill comes
engaging.
from?
What's that?
Do you know where
Oh,
the treadmill
yeah.
comes from?
Well,
It
it
was
was,
a torture device.
yeah, it literally was. It in like English prisons, they put inmates on it, right?
Yeah, and they used to power things with them and like do work with them, but it must have just been awful. And and now we take these things into our home, and that's one of the things that you kind of brought to my attention, is these things look like they are designed to make you feel like the gym is at home, but it just does not achieve that.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting the way that we see companies trying to make these exercises more engaging is through the coaches, right? Like their personalities, and that has definitely worked, right? Like, these coaches are so much fun to listen to. They're super motivating. Like, I'm definitely drawing from that for Samato. But the great thing about Pilates is that it's very skill based, right? And like, there's a level of engagement from feeling like you're building a skill and like not just one single skill, but like several different skills. So like, you're going to start doing something that you've been working towards for weeks and realize, oh wait, I'm doing the harder version today, and oh, this is really cool. I've wanted to be able to do this movement for a while because like I see other people doing it and they look so cool when they do it. And like suddenly you're feeling really, you get that like validation, that like rush of like, oh, I achieved this cool thing. I achieved this skill. And there you have the mental engagement, the physical engagement, and it's not quite as grueling and repetitive as a lot of fitness is these days.
Yeah, that's like so this is something that I think touches on a whole bunch of things. Like one, that we have this preconceived notion that this should be like just a deadline to bikini season.
Right.
Right. The other one is that these devices that we bring into our house are supposed to make us feel like we're at the gym, but we just have to identify that we don't.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is that nobody's got any time.
Yeah.
But when you talk about leading somebody on a path, I think that the reason all those other companies essentially dropped off were because like would drop their user off is because like their transaction was already achieved.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I think for so long, like up until now, really, we have put the burden of building your own fitness plan and like being knowledgeable about your own physical health when it comes to working out on the individual, and sort of blaming the individual when things aren't working for them or when they're not seeing results, and like just sort of telling everyone, well, you're just not working hard enough. But we're starting to understand how different our bodies are and how much, hormones and, your thyroid and various chemicals in our body are affecting not just weight loss, but, a lot of things like, like mental health and, whatever. People aren't just working out to lose weight. People are working out for a lot of reasons. And there's a lot of science behind like how you can achieve those goals that people are trying to achieve. But expecting people to be able to develop fitness plans for themselves and long-term fitness plans for themselves that they're actually going to be able to sustain and achieve the goals that they want to achieve is like pointing someone towards WebMD and expecting them to be their own doctor. Like these things are complicated. There's research that's not even, complete yet that people are relying on now to try to achieve various goals. And it's just not fair. And like it's really the source of a lot of frustration when it comes to fitness and exercise for people. And so I'm hoping that by taking the burden off of the individual and saying like, that we've got you, right? Like we're going to carry you through this, and we're not going to just drop you off and then have you scrolling through an endless library of content, wondering what you should do next and just kind of guessing, and then wondering why you haven't achieved whatever goal you're trying to achieve. We're going to provide you with this algorithm that is going to be able to construct, it literally constructs classes out of individual clips from a database of like movements. So we film our instructors doing each movement. We film them from various angles, and we film various different levels of difficulty for each movement, things like that. Like all, and all the like phrases and like words of encouragement and things like that that your instructor might shout at you. And then those are all in this database, and this algorithm selects each individual movement based on, muscles that you want to focus on or health goals that you want to achieve. So it builds each class individually, and then it also builds that long-term fitness plan. And it's watching you as you're working out. There's sensors in the equipment. There's embedded sensor arrays in the carriage that you're like lying on when you're doing a lot of Pilates exercises. So it can really understand not just like where your body is so that it can correct your form, but like how you're doing. So it can understand if this class was too difficult for you and it'll adjust the next class, or if it was too easy for you, it'll make the next class harder and increase. And it so like keeps a record of like how much resistance is this person using? Was that too easy? Was that too hard? And it's constantly updating your benchmark fitness elements, so that you can just not just reach your first goal, but then maintain that element that you've just achieved, and then reach new goals in the future.
Okay, so on one hand, I see like the very helpful side of this. Like I remember going to yoga and seeing an instructor that was like would go around and quietly tell people like, you know, you're trying to achieve this angle with your hips, or if you want to do this modification.
Yeah.
And that's what this type of algorithm will achieve.
Right. So like there's all these
more than just a video, because it could almost end up being a choose your own adventure based on the feedback from the device.
Totally. Yeah.
And then on the other side is like you see all these videos online of people going to gyms, and because they're using improper technique, they're like lifting way more than they should be, or like they're doing techniques that are way above their level. And like, is this device going to have some type of like calm the F down?
Totally. Yes. Yeah. I mean, you know, I'm happy to hear when someone's just in the gym giving it their best shot, but like, yeah, there's real risks and like physical injuries that can happen when you're lifting too much or you're not lifting with the correct form. And a lot of what you see, a lot of connected fitness devices with with sensors that are supposed to correct your form, they come with one camera that's looking at you from one angle, and theoretically it's supposed to be able to tell you everything you're doing wrong. But like if you're in a gym, your coach is circling around you, they're looking from the front, from the side, from the back as you're doing this exercise, because watching someone from one angle is going to give you a quarter, if that, of the information that you need to know to actually be able to effectively correct someone's form.
Yeah, even on phones now, they're not only using 3 different cameras that help them achieve things like depth of field and also depth perception. Like one of the things that people, if they ever lose an eye, they lose depth perception.
Right.
And the other thing that they're doing is including things that are beyond what eyes can see, like LiDAR. And it'll be advantages like that kind of open a gateway even further. But still, if you're only getting that one perspective, there's kind of a lot of information that's left to chance.
Right. So that's why we have this sensor redundancy. Not only are we going to have cameras at multiple angles, but we're also going to have these pressure sensor arrays in the carriage of the Pilates reformer. So it will map out where your body is. We can figure out if, like, let's say you're like on your knees on this thing, and doing some kind of, you're like doing a leg press, right? Your hands and knees are on the carriage and your foot is on the foot bar, and you're pushing your body up and down this the track. We can figure out if your hips are above the knee that's on the carriage just based on where the pressure is on your shin on this carriage, right? Like if there's too much pressure closer to your ankle, we know you're leaning too far back, that your hips are probably too far behind your knee. But if it's like balanced right over your knee, the majority of that pressure on your leg, then we know that your hip is in the right place. And we have cameras that can back that up. So having this sensor redundancy will really be able to guide people in the way that they need to be guided, especially with a fitness modality like Pilates, where that's really important, and yoga as well.
Yeah, I like the example that you use, because a camera straight on, if your knee is a little bit further back and it's not directly under the force that you're putting on it, that'd be real tricky.
Yeah.
Right? Like technically it's going to be from the camera's perspective, it's going to be just minutely smaller than it was. And it will very likely be within the degree of variance of detection.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many times, like, this isn't really related to the Pilates, but like, let's say I'm doing a back squat, right? And like, there's too much pressure on my heels, too much pressure on my toes. Like I'm leaning too far forward, not enough, like I'm not like balanced. there's times when like I feel it, like I can feel myself too far forward and not even my coach would notice. But like I felt myself having to kind of like, squeeze my toes against the floor to make sure that I could rebalance myself. But there's foot shoe insole inserts that can detect things like that. So like sometimes your coach can't even see it, but you can feel it. But a lot of times, there's a lot of people out there who might not know, oh, that was a bad thing that I had to like push on my toes to go to push my body back and rebalance myself in that front squat. Maybe that was too much weight. Maybe my shoulders were too far forward or something like that. But like, yeah, these movements, they can be so minute and minuscule that like, having the advantage of being able to like insert technology that can reveal these things to people who might not otherwise know because they don't have the benefit of years and years of Pilates experience or years and years of lifting experience. It opens up the door to everyone.
Okay, so I want to make sure that I've got a whole grasp on this. So I'm going to give it back to you, and you just tell me where I screw this up.
Okay.
As the founder of Sumato, you were trying to achieve fitness that would fit into someone's lifestyle, into the environment they're in, and also would respect that they don't have much time. So you're looking for something that is more likely to achieve their goals, in whether or not it's gaining some tone or strength training, and then also that wouldn't ditch them, that would take them on a path, and that path could technically be very long, meaning that maybe during someone's goals early in their life, they're shooting for bikini season. And later in their life, they're trying to retain as much ability for movement as they can.
100% dead on. Yeah, that's exactly what we're building.
Oh, that's fantastic. So as a marketer, I'm constantly trying to figure out what the people are asking the machines, right? So when I look at things like Google, I most often approach it like I mentioned, upside down and backwards. So I hang out on this site that I'd like to recommend for people. It's called answerthepublic.com. And when you use keywords, it can actually show you what everybody is asking into Google. And so when I started to kind of look around at home exercise, at fitness in general, what the world was asking was, which home exercise burns the most calories?
Yeah.
How do you feel about that from your perspective?
I mean, it's a classic question. I'd say it's flawed for people to focus on calorie burn because the assumption is people want to burn calories because they still believe what they have been told back. Like, I feel like we started really obsessing over this in like the late 90s, early thousands. It
Mhm.
became like a chronic obsession that calories in equaled calories out. And so people would count every single calorie that they ate that day, and then they would get on the treadmill where it told you how many calories you were burning, and they would wait until they burned like at least like a quarter of the calories that they would consume because they assumed like that was what you had to do to lose weight.
Mhm.
I think it
Just
just
basic math in their
signifies.
mind, right? Calories in,
Yeah.
calories out.
Right, and there's been a lot of research now to show that that's not really how it works. But it also just shows like as a society, our obsession with losing weight and being skinny and like the fear of being big, um, especially like women, the fear of like being big in terms of like growing your muscles too much, things like that, and like it's just disappointing because it just sort of perpetuates this concept that exercise it's not something that you should be like enjoying, it's not something that you should be doing for pleasure, it's the punishment for eating, which is
Mm.
something you should be doing. You should be eating, you should be enjoying food and enjoying your life, and then you should be enjoying exercise because you found something that you like to do that gets you moving and you enjoy doing it, and not, you like the counting the calories thing is I feel like it's a symptom of a much greater problem in our society about our attitude towards exercise.
All right, I love your answer, because this is actually the way the world talks to the internet, is very simple questions. And they're also extreme. What is the best? What is the most? What is so on? However, we almost never choose extreme, right? Like, most
Yeah.
people have the wealth to essentially drive an exotic car if they gave up stuff like shelter, right? They could be extreme, and that would be the fastest way you could get to work, technically. But when it comes down to it, we don't actually choose that. So sometimes this is the start to someone who will actually take care like you did and say, hey, listen, I understand where you're coming from, but the reason I think you might be asking this question is because you were convinced earlier that this will achieve your fitness goal.
Right. Which is also why, so like in the onboarding process, we're not like asking people like, do you want to burn calories? Do you want to burn as many calories as you can possibly burn? Or like, do you want to lift as much weight as you could possibly lift? We're asking like, what are your real goals here? Like,
It's not which records would you like to break.
right. It's like, what are you really trying to do? Let's say, like, are you trying to improve your cardiovascular health? Are you trying to tone, certain parts of your body? Are you trying to grow certain parts of your body? Or if you're trying to lose weight, fine. Like, we can create a program for that. That's a totally legitimate reason to work out. I don't want people to think that that I think that it's like dumb to work out because you want to lose weight. That's,
Well, where am I going to put in
very real
that
reason for working out.
my own footprints on the ceiling?
What's that?
Where can I put into the onboarding that my goal is to achieve my own footprints on the ceiling?
Well, you could say that like maybe balance, mobility, and acrobatics are your goals, and we could absolutely create a program that will help you become more flexible, better at balancing, and we could incorporate a little bit more sort of acrobatic movements. We're not going to teach you how to do a handstand, but but we can teach you. There are very acrobatic Pilates movements that can sort of get you to that same impressive place where you're doing things that you did not think you could do before. So yeah.
Well, I'm excited. Can you tell us just briefly before we break here about where Somato is in its growth process? So you are a startup founder. You have a machine, the Somato as a device. It's going to, basically the feedback that I hear on the bikes that everybody has is that they're a pain in the butt, like literally a pain in the butt, right?
Oh, I know. Yeah, they totally get you.
Yeah, so you're talking about a device that doesn't have that challenge and is going to help people achieve like a very high workout rate per minute, should they choose to, towards some of their fitness goals. Now, this device it's not in stores yet.
No, not yet.
So let's go back from there and say, okay, where are you in the process of this map, bringing this to the market?
So right now we're completing our final prototype. So once this prototype is ready to go, this is a disconnected prototype. So it's just the machine that's foldable. It looks great. It can hang on the back of your door, or like slide underneath your bed. We want to get people on it. We want to get people's feedback. We want to get people familiar with the Somato reformer. So we're going to hold a bunch of pop-ups to get people on the machine, maybe put some of them in small gyms, start getting that user feedback. And then we're going to add in that connected element. And then that's sort of like the final move, and then hit the market. And we'll start with pre-sales, and then, fully launch.
Okay, so let's say that there was somebody who is already like really dedicated to Pilates, and they're so excited to hear that you're going to bring this device and that they can help introduce this, or perhaps give you feedback. Where would be the best way to get in touch with you? I know that you hang out on LinkedIn a little bit.
Yeah, definitely LinkedIn message me. You can also, if you want to sort of keep up with what we're doing, sign up for our newsletter on our website, somatofit.com. And you can also email me at hannah@somato.fit.
Perfect.
Yeah, I'd love to
So
hear from
that's
you.
something where people can get this is something to definitely get energized about. Like if you think about what's going on, like even when I was taking a look at that website, Answer the Public, the celebrity of Peloton hosts
Hmm.
or coaches is incredible. Like when I was trying to get more information, there was more people searching about what their personal lives are
Yeah.
than there was searching about anything to do with how the device works or whether or not it's effective or like, anything else. It was incredible. So they kind of put a culture with a bike.
Yeah.
And I think that proves this path, right? But I think that was just the first step, and bringing something that's a little bit more holistic and isn't just a single like thing it's going to be awesome. I think that you do have something that a market's already screaming for. What about the investor crowd? Are you is this something that's already closed off to them?
No, not yet. So we haven't started or we haven't raised our seed round yet. We're totally bootstrapped right now, but we will once we have this prototype and these pop-ups going and we start getting that user engagement. We're going to start raising our seed round and yeah, go from there.
Well, that's incredible. I am excited. I've already signed up for the newsletter, and obviously I will be keeping up with you as you launch this because I think what you're doing is awesome, and I love the fact that this is your expression. I hear you when you say that I really want to change people's access to movement, and that's going to be something that maybe changes their lens of perception. And that's what we're really about here at Leadership Line of Sight is we can just grip the lens of perception and just change it just a touch. We're going to change the way that people see everything. And I think more people should look at you and say, hey, listen, I have this in me and I should invent something. Like my daughter, August, she's 7 and she is dedicated to bringing one of her ideas into the world.
Nice. I love to hear that.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
This is Leadership Line of Sight, and I've been here with Hannah Fink. Hannah is the founder of Somato. You can find them at Somato Fit, and that's something that you should definitely Google. If you're an investor that saw what Peloton was capable of and is looking for like the next ride, if you're somebody who is already deeply into Pilates and thinks that this is going to be amazing, or if you're frustrated that all this gym equipment makes your house look awful and you want something that's going to be easy for you to use and just keep fitness as part of your life, I really think that you should check this out and listen to Hannah wherever she is talking to people. It's been a real pleasure to have you here.
Thanks, Taylor.
My name is Taylor Hack. This has been Leadership Line of Sight, and I hope that you have a remarkable day. Cheers.